Welcome everyone. Now if you're new to wildlife photography, then in this video I'm going to share with you 5 tips to help you get your best wildlife photos. And the first tip is to make use of silent shooting. Now the mirrorless camera has what's called electronic shutter. There's no moving parts here, which is absolutely fantastic for wildlife photography, as it means it's completely silent, makes no noise at all. Now this is particularly useful for any subjects that are just a bit more nervous, and also for birds and animals that have particularly good hearing. Subjects like deer, for example, or owls that really have very sensitive hearing and can be affected quite a lot by a noisy camera shutter. This means you can put the subjects more at ease, and it means you can spend more time with that bird or animal. You're more likely to get better pictures and a variety of pictures as well. Now there is, however, a disadvantage to electronic shutter, and that's that you can get something which is called a rolling shutter, which is a distortion of your image. Now this is something I've experienced myself, particularly with the wingtips of birds, and it's something that I find difficult to predict, but I have had it happen particularly when birds are flapping the wings very, very fast and I'm using a high shutter speed, and that's with my Canon R6. Now you probably have at least one other shutter option, and if you use this then it should reduce or eliminate rolling shutter completely, but it will make some noise. And the next tip is to use a fast frame rate. The electronic shutter also allows us to shoot continuously at very fast frame rates. And on my camera, the R6, it can do 20 frames a second. This is really helpful if you shoot lots of action, so perhaps it's birds in flight, maybe it's some kind of interaction between different species or subjects, or maybe it's a certain type of behavior. And the thing about photographing action is it can be very difficult to guarantee getting a sharp image, so the more we take, the more you're increasing your chances, you're increasing your percentage, your hit rate by taking a lot of pictures. And as well as that, it really helps sometimes just to capture that perfect moment. In a sequence of action, there might only be one frame that really gets that perfect pose, or that millisecond, that moment you're after. So if we can use a very fast frame rate, then we're more chance of getting that. And it's really useful for more extreme images. So sometimes with the human eye, we can't actually see everything that's happening, and this fast frame rate can reveal that to us. For example, a bird explosively taking off, you can record all those feathers perfectly spread out one by one, or perhaps it's an insect that's unfolding its wings. So the really fast frame rate can help with the more extreme pictures. The downside of this is that sometimes you can just take too many pictures. 20, 30, 40 frames per second is a lot to take. Sometimes you can even end up filling your memory card much quicker than you'd like to. So it might be worth switching to one of the other shutter options instead. And tip number 3 is to make use of the on-screen exposure. Now with my old camera, the DSLR, I'd have to take the picture first, then look on the back of the screen to see if it was okay and it was exposed correctly, and obviously that could mean missing shots, which quite often I did. With the mirrorless camera, you can get a real-time view of exactly how the exposure is going to look as you take the picture. Any changes you make to the exposure are going to show instantly, and your image is pretty much going to look how it is when you take the photo. You can make your adjustments, make it brighter or darker, and instantly you'll see those changes. This saves time and it saves guesswork. And the bonus is that if you're using the viewfinder to take the picture, it means you don't have to take your eye away. You can keep your eye to the camera. That's going to help put the subject at ease. You're also maybe partially hidden. Your face is a little bit hidden by doing that, and you're less likely to spook that wildlife subject. And with a lot of mirrorless cameras, you can also get an on-screen histogram on the screen or in the viewfinder, which is really a useful tool. Now that's a little bit beyond the scope of this video, but basically it shows you the darkest areas and lightest areas of your picture and whether they're within the range that the camera can record. And my next tip is to make use of the Flipout Screen. This is a regular feature of mirrorless cameras, and it enables you to take pictures in difficult positions. Now I'd say if you're in a comfortable position, then I would try and use the viewfinder. I think you connect better to what you're doing, and also it makes it easier to track moving subjects as well. But in certain situations, the screen is definitely going to be your best friend. For example, if you wanted to photograph something low down on the ground, make a more intimate picture, or maybe you just want to improve the background, then the screen is really useful there. Another perhaps less thought of use of the screen is actually if you're photographing really high, and then instead of having to kind of crick your neck to get low down to the viewfinder, you can just simply flip out the screen, get it to a nice angle, and then look down there, so it's much more comfortable. And I'm sure you'll find many situations where the screen is the best option. And tip number 5 is to make the most of the autofocus coverage. Now, the technology the mirrorless camera uses to focus actually allows it to focus very close to the edges of the frame. Now, you couldn't really do this with the old DSLR. You were much more restricted towards the center. With the mirrorless camera, you can focus almost completely, and maybe in some cases completely to the edge. Now, this is really useful if you're tracking moving subjects. If the subject does get away from the center, then the focus should still track it pretty well towards the edges. And also it's useful if you want to compose your subject very far to one side. So for example, let's say you want to do something that just feels a bit more creative, or perhaps you're trying to show a lot of the habitat where that bird or animal lives. And here you could use the automatic tracking, or perhaps take control manually and place the focus point over the subject. There's definitely a lot more benefits to a mirrorless camera, including autofocus options, image stabilization, and size and weight. If you'd like me to cover any of these in a future video, please let me know in the comments. I'm going to put a video up on the screen for you now, which is one of my first shoots I ever did with my first mirrorless camera, the Canon R6, using an EF lens with an adapter. I'll see you over there. Thanks for watching.